My name is Stacy Larson and I'm 32 years old. Standing amid the buzzing chaos of Nashville International Airport, I clutched my phone, heart pounding. I had just learned that I'd inherited $36 million from my grandfather, a fortune that could change everything. I called my parents first, expecting excitement, maybe even pride. Instead, my mother's voice was ice cold. Well, money changes people. Don't expect us to celebrate. My father echoed her, his tone flat and detached. I swallowed hard, then called my younger sister. Her response came sharp, almost a hiss. Good for you, Stacy. Don't expect a parade. Their words stung like a slap I never saw coming. I hadn't wanted a party, just something human. Shaken, I got into my car, their voices replaying in my mind. Why were they so distant? The road blurred as I drove, my hands gripping the wheel. I kept replaying the call, searching for a reason. Then, out of nowhere, a truck's headlights flashed in front of me. Its horn blared, tires screeched, and my world spun. Glass shattered, metal crunched, and my phone slipped from my hand as darkness closed in. When I opened my eyes, the faint beep of a heart monitor echoed around me at Vanderbilt Medical Center. My body ached. My thoughts were foggy. And no one was there. No parents, no sister. The emptiness hit harder than the crash itself. What kind of family doesn't show up? I lay there. The weight of their silence sinking in, a seed of doubt taking root. Something was wrong. Very wrong. What would you do if your family turned their back on you when you needed them most? Share your stories in the comments. Have you ever faced betrayal like this? Hit subscribe because this is only the beginning. The steady beep of the heart monitor woke me. Pain seared through my ribs, sharp and relentless, anchoring me to the stiff hospital bed at Vanderbilt Medical Center. My head throbbed, fragments of memory flickering, standing in the airport. My family's icy voices, the blinding flash of truck headlights. I tried to push myself up, but a surge of dizziness forced me back down. Where was everyone? My parents, my sister. No one had come. The stillness in the room pressed heavier than the bandages wrapped around my arm. I reached for the bedside phone, my fingers trembling, and dialed my sister. Her voice came through syrupy sweet at first. Stacy, oh my gosh, you're awake. We were so worried. I frowned, catching the false note in her tone. Where are you? Why hasn't anyone come? I asked quietly. The pause on the line stretched. Then she laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. Guess the universe wanted a piece of that inheritance, too. West up, okay? The call ended abruptly. My stomach twisted. That wasn't worry, it was ridicule. A nurse entered, her badge reading Carol. She checked the monitor. Her expression, kind but restrained. You're lucky to be alive, she said, adjusting the 4-line. I hesitated before asking. Did my sister come by? Carol's lips pressed together. Yes, she stopped in yesterday. Took your phone from the table, said she'd keep it safe. But she glanced toward the hallway, lowering her voice. She deleted some messages before leaving. Looked like bank notifications. My pulse spiked. Bank notifications. Why would Brenda delete those? I asked Carol to bring my jacket from the closet. She returned moments later, handing it over gently. I dug through the pockets, my fingers brushing against a folded paper. Unfolding it, I froze. It was a withdrawal slip from my account dated the same day as the crash. $50,000 withdrawn. The signature wasn't mine. My sister's face flashed in my mind, her voice dripping with that fainted sympathy. Why would she take my phone? Why erase the alerts? My breath quickened as the puzzle started to form in my mind. The accident no longer felt random. Carol studied me, her brow creased with concern. Are you all right? She asked softly. I nodded, though my thoughts were racing. I needed to understand what was happening. The coldness I'd felt from my family at the airport wasn't just envy over the $36 million. It was something darker. I gripped the paper so tightly that it crumpled in my fist. "Can you get me a phone to call someone?" I asked. Carol gave a small nod and stepped out. When she returned, she handed me a hospital phone. I took a deep breath and dialed my grandfather's attorney, a man I'd met only once. His voice was calm but measured. "Stacy. I heard about the accident. I'm glad you're safe. The inheritance is secure for now, but we need to talk about your family." My throat tightened. "What about them?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. There was a pause. Then he said, "There's been unusual activity on your financial accounts. Someone tried to access them, claiming you authorized it." Cold rippled through me. Authorized? I hadn't signed anything. I ended the call, staring at the ceiling tiles. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor grew louder, syncing with the pounding in my chest. My sister's mocking words echoed in my head. The universe wanted a piece. Was she behind this? The withdrawal slip burned in my palm. Undeniable proof that something was terribly wrong. I thought about my parents, their detached voices at the airport. Were they involved too? I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was piling up like shards of glass cutting through denial. Carol lingered near the doorway, hesitant. "If you need to reach anyone else, you can use this," she said, setting the phone beside me. I managed a weak smile. "Thank you," I murmured. As the door closed, I stared at the slip again, the number smudged from my grip. $50,000 taken without my knowledge. My chest tightened, not from injury this time, but from betrayal. Everything inside me screamed for answers. My hand shook as I stared at the withdrawal slip. Carol entered with a tray of medical supplies, the faint clink of metal snapping me out of my daze. The withdrawal slip was still clenched in my hand. $50,000 gone signed by someone who wasn't me. My sister's mocking words. Guess the universe wanted a piece echoed in my head, but I pushed them aside. I needed clarity. Maybe settling the hospital bill would help me think. I handed my credit card to Carol and asked her to process it. When she returned, her brows were drawn together. "It's declined," she said quietly. "The card's been deactivated." My stomach dropped. Deactivated. That card was tied to my main account untouched except for routine payments. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice trembling. Carol hesitated, then leaned closer. "When your sister was here, she asked about your paperwork. Said she'd take care of your hospital fees." I thought it was strange. "She didn't seem very worried about you." My pulse quickened. Take care of my fees. She had taken my phone, erased my bank alerts, and now my card didn't work. This wasn't carelessness, it was calculated. I grabbed the hospital phone and called my mother. Her voice came through clipped and impatient. "What is it, Stacy? You should be resting." I swallowed my anger. "Why isn't my card working? Did Brenda do something?" A long silence followed before she replied coldly, "She's handling everything. You should focus on recovery, not finances." The line went dead. Her dismissal hit like a punch. Handling everything. What did that even mean? I reached for my laptop, balancing it on the hospital tray. My fingers shook as I logged into my sister's social media. There it was, a photo posted the same day as my crash. She stood in a boutique holding a sleek designer bag with gold clasps, smiling like she owned the world. The caption read, "Treating myself." The timestamp matched the date on the withdrawal slip. My breath caught. She'd spent my money while I was fighting for my life. The pieces were aligning and the picture was ugly. I closed the laptop, my mind spiraling. The crash replayed in flashes, the truck's headlights veering too close, the horn's piercing blare, the deliberate way it swerved. It hadn't felt random. Someone wanted me gone. My sister's face rose in my mind again, her false sympathy dripping through every word. But why? The $36 million. It had to be the inheritance. My parents' icy detachment, her sudden spending spree, it all pointed to something darker. I needed help. I called my grandfather's attorney, Robert Dean, a man I'd only met briefly during the reading of the will. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Stacy, I'm relieved to hear your voice. We need to talk about your accounts." My grip tightened around the phone. "What's going on?" He paused before answering. "The inheritance is secure, but there's been suspicious activity. Someone tried to access your trust fund claiming you gave authorization. I blocked the transfer, but we need to investigate immediately." My heart sank. "Who tried to access it?" Robert's tone grew careful. "The request came through a third party. We're tracing it, but it's linked to someone close to you." "Someone close to me?" The words landed like a stone in my chest. My sister's photo. The withdrawal slipped the frozen card. It all pointed to her. I thanked Robert, barely managing to sound steady, and hung up. The hospital room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. My family wasn't just indifferent, they were conspiring. Carol reappeared to check my chart. "You look pale," she said softly. I forced a nod, though my mind was far away. The crash replayed again. The headlights too precise, the horn too long. The way the impact came from the side, not hidden. I remembered a silhouette behind the wheel, but no face. Was it someone Brenda knew? The thought made my skin crawl. I needed proof, not just suspicion. Robert's warning about the trust fund was a lifeline, but I had to move fast. My family thought I was powerless, but they were wrong. "Carol," I said quietly. "Can I borrow a pen and some paper?" She handed them over, her gaze lingering. "Be careful," she murmured as if she sensed the storm gathering around me. I began scribbling notes. Dates, amounts, the social media post. Every detail mattered. The inheritance that should have united us had turned my family into strangers. I wouldn't let them take what was mine. Robert's voice echoed in my head, steady and precise. "Someone close to you." Footsteps echoed down the hospital corridor. I clutched the phone, my heart pounding as Robert's warning replayed in my mind. Someone named Charles West was listed on legal documents attempting to seize control of my inheritance. The name didn't register at first, but the attorney's cautious tone set my nerves on edge. "Be careful, Stacy," he had said. "This person claims authority over your assets." I set the receiver down, my thoughts spiraling. The withdrawal slipped my sister's photo, flaunting that designer bag, my mother's indifference. It all pointed to a plan I hadn't yet uncovered. The door burst open. My sister strode in, heels striking sharply against the tile. Behind her came my parents' faces, stiff with impatience, and a man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a smug smile. My sister carried a stack of papers, her eyes glinting with determination. "Stacy, we need to talk," she said curtly. "You're not well enough to handle that money. We're here to help." My mother crossed her arms. "It's for your own good," she added flatly. My father stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor. I looked at the stranger, unease rippling through me. His face, strong jawline, dark eyes sparked a memory buried deep. Then, snorts, it hit me like a freight train. Charles West. 5 years ago during a reckless trip to Las Vegas. I'd married him in secret, a whirlwind mistake fueled by charm and champagne. It ended 6 months later, annulled after I learned about his lies and debts. I'd buried that chapter too ashamed to tell anyone. My breath caught as I realized the truth. He was my sister's husband. "Now sign these," my sister demanded, shoving the papers toward me. "They declare you unfit to manage your finances. We'll take care of everything." Her tone dripped with false concern, but her grip on the pen was iron. I scanned the document. Words like incapacitated and proxy leapt out. My parents stood firm behind her. "Do it, Stacy," my father muttered. "Don't make this harder." I turned to Charles, my pulse quickening. "Why are you here?" I asked evenly. He flinched, avoiding my gaze. What? How do you know my name? He stammered. My sister froze mid-motion. I pressed harder. Why are you listed on these papers, Charles West? The color drained from his face. Before he could stop himself, he blurted. That's my wife. The room went still. My sister's jaw dropped, the papers slipping from her hands. My mother gasped, turning sharply toward him. What are you talking about? She demanded. My father's expression faltered, confusion replacing his usual stoicism. Charles stumbled backward, panic overtaking his smug composure. I didn't mean you married me in Vegas. Charles, I cut in coldly 5 years ago. You thought I'd never tell anyone, didn't you? My sister's face twisted in fury. What is this nonsense? She snapped. Explain yourself. But Charles was unraveling, his hands shaking. I thought you were gone, he muttered. You weren't supposed to survive that crash. The words hit like a slap. My worst fear confirmed itself. My sister's eyes widened, then narrowed quickly as she regained her mask. He's lying, Stacy. You're confused, delirious. Just sign the papers. I stayed calm, though my mind raced. Robert, I said into the phone, still on speaker from our earlier call. Are you hearing this? His voice crackled through. Every word, Stacy, keep them talking. My sister's head snapped toward the phone, her composure shattering. You're recording us. I met her glare. You're not getting a dime of that money. Charles panicked. It wasn't my idea, he shouted, pointing at my sister. She planned at the truck, the money, everything. I just went along. Shut up, you idiot. My sister screamed, lunging at him, but it was too late. My parents stood frozen, guilt flooding their faces. My mother stammered. We didn't know. We thought you were just unwell. My father said nothing. His silence was louder than any confession. I gripped the hospital bed's railing, my voice icy. You all came here to steal from me, my own family. My sister didn't deny it. Charles wiped the sweat from his brow, his earlier arrogance gone. I didn't want to hurt you, he whispered. It was her idea. My sister slammed the papers onto the bed. Sign, Stacy, or we'll take this to court. You'll lose everything. I straightened, resolve solid as steel. No, I said calmly. You'll lose. I glanced toward Carol, who had slipped quietly into the room during the commotion. Call security, I ordered. She nodded and stepped out. My sister's expression twisted with fury, but before she could respond, Charles turned ghostly pale and stumbled backward. The hospital room door swung open. My sister's face was a mask of fury, her eyes blazing as she clutched a new stack of papers freshly printed. The ink still sharp. You think you're clever, Stacy? She hissed, thrusting the documents toward me. Sign these or I'll drag you through court until you're broke. The papers were forgeries, copies of the earlier ones, but with even bolder claims. I was mentally unfit and a danger to myself. My pulse quickened, but I stayed composed, the echo of Charles's confession. That's my wife, still burning in my memory. You're desperate, I said evenly. She sneered, leaning closer. You don't deserve that money. You'll waste it just like you've wasted everything else. Her words stung, but I saw through them. Every insult was a shield for her guilt. My parents hovered behind her, uneasy and silent. My mother's fingers twitched while my father's jaw tightened, his eyes, refusing to meet mine. Charles lingered near the door, his earlier panic replaced by a nervous tick. Before I could reply, 2 security guards burst in radios, crackling. Step back, one, ordered, moving between us. My sister froze the papers, trembling in her grip. This is a family matter, she snapped, but her voice faltered. The guards didn't move, their stance firm. Carol slipped in behind them, meeting my eyes with a steady nod. She'd made the call just as I'd asked. Charles, cornered, began to unravel. His hand shook as he pointed at my sister. "It wasn't me," he cried. "She hired the guy to ram your car, Stacy. She wanted you gone so we could take the money." The room fell silent. My sister's face drained of color. My mother gasped, clutching my father's arm while he stared at Charles in disbelief. I met my sister's gaze, my voice slicing through the air. "You took everything, even my name." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. The truth was out raw and undeniable. Charles kept rambling, words spilling like water from a cracked dam. "She paid a guy in a truck, told him to make it look like an accident." "I didn't want to, Stacy. I swear." His desperation was pitiful, but his confession sealed it. My sister's greed had consumed her. Carol stepped forward, already dialing her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said calmly. My sister lunged, trying to snatch the phone, but a guard caught her arm, forcing her back. "You can't do this," she screamed, thrashing in his grip. I was protecting the family. The lie was paper thin, and no one believed it. Not even our parents, who stood frozen, their faces etched with guilt and disbelief. "Protecting the family," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "You tried to kill me." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. For the first time, my sister had no comeback. The guards held her tight as Carol spoke into the phone, giving the police our location. My mother stepped forward, trembling. "We didn't know Stacy. We thought she was just helping." My father nodded weakly. "We followed her lead. We never meant for this." I shook my head, their excuses hollow. "You chose her over me," I said quietly. "You always have." Tears welled in my mother's eyes, but I felt nothing. They had stood by while my sister plotted my death. Charles, still babbling, was seized by the second guard. "I'll tell them everything," he pleaded. "It was all her idea." Moments later, police officers arrived, their boots echoing on the tile. One cuffed my sister. Her face twisted with rage as she glared at me. Charles didn't resist slumping as another officer let him out. My parents stood motionless, pale and wordless. "We're sorry," my mother whispered. I turned away. Their apologies meant nothing now. I picked up the hospital phone and dialed Robert. His voice came through calm and focused. "Stacy, I heard everything. The recording's secure. I'll start the legal filings immediately, restraining orders, fraud charges, the works. Make it airtight," I said. "I want them to pay." My tone was cold, but my hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of betrayal. My family, the people I had trusted most, had tried to erase me. Carol stayed by my side, her presence steady. "You did the right thing," she said softly, checking my chart as if to anchor me. I managed a faint nod, eyes fixed on the door where my sister had been taken. The room felt hollow, not peaceful, just raw, like an open wound. I had reclaimed my life, but the cost was brutal. My family was gone, not by distance, but by choice and by truth. The officer lingered to take my statement. I recounted everything. The crash. The forged papers, Charles' confession, my voice detached but unwavering. When he left, I sank back into the pillows, exhaustion washing over me. The fight wasn't finished, but I'd survived their worst. The echo of handcuffs still hung in the air. 5 days later, I was in a secure apartment. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, but the locked door and coded entry gave me the safety I needed. My body still ached from the crash. Yet my mind was sharp, driven by the betrayal that had unfolded in the hospital. My sister's plot, Charles's confession, my parents' hollow excuses. They haunted me. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I was ready to fight back. Robert arrived first, his briefcase heavy with documents. "We've got solid evidence," he said, spreading papers across the table. "The police are building a case, but we need to move quickly." I nodded, scanning the legal forms, restraining orders, fraud charges, and a petition to freeze my family's access to my accounts. The $36 million were still mine, but I wouldn't rest until every thread of their scheme was exposed. A knock interrupted us. A man entered, his badge catching the light. Detective William Fox. All business, he set a laptop on the table and spoke crisply. We pulled traffic camera footage from the night of your crash, he said. It's crystal clear. A truck swerved into your lane on purpose. He played the video. The image was grainy but damning. The truck's path was deliberate, its headlights cutting straight toward my car. My stomach twisted as I watched memories flashing back in fragments of glass and screeching metal. We've identified the driver, William added. A hired hand. We're tracking him down. Robert leaned forward, his tone sharp. There's more. Bank records show your sister transferred $10,000 to an account connected to that driver the day before the crash. I clenched my fists. She hadn't just wanted me gone, she had paid for it. William pulled up the transfer statement, the numbers glaring on screen, a wire labeled consulting fees. A lie plain as day. My phone buzzed. Robert answered on speaker, his face hardening as Charles's voice came through tense and desperate from the county jail. I'll tell you everything, he said. Just get me a deal. I leaned in, my pulse quickening. She got your parents on board, he continued. They agreed to testify that you were unstable, unfit to handle the inheritance. They didn't know about the crash plan, but they were ready to lie in court. My jaw tightened. My parents, my own blood, had been willing to betray me for a share of the money. William scribbled notes rapidly. We can use this, he said. Charles's testimony will bury her. Robert nodded, though his gaze stayed on me. There's one more thing, he said, opening his laptop. I got an email this morning from a source at the precinct. He clicked a file and a video appeared, an exchange captured from a hacked account. It showed my sister wiring money to the driver. Her message blunt. Make it quick. No traces. My breath caught. This was it. The final nail in her coffin. Robert's voice was steady. This video ties her directly to the attempt on your life. With Charles's confession and the bank records, she's finished. I stared at the frozen image of her face, cold, calculating, unrecognizable. The sister I'd grown up with was gone, replaced by a stranger with greed in her eyes. The weight pressed down on me, but I swallowed it. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was furious. William closed his laptop. We're raiding her place tonight, he said. She's been laying low, but we've got eyes on her. A chill ran through me. Where is she? I asked. He hesitated. At a restaurant on Music Row throwing a party. Your parents are there, too. They think you're out of the picture. My blood boiled. A party celebrating while I was supposed to be dead. I stood, my resolve hardening. I want to face them. Robert frowned. That's risky, Stacy. You're still recovering. I shook my head. They need to see I'm not broken. William nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. We'll have officers nearby, he said. But you call the shots. For the first time since the crash, I felt the balance shift. I was no longer their victim. I was in control. For the next hour, we planned every detail. Robert prepared the legal filings while William coordinated his team. I scrolled through my sister's social media. There it was, a fresh post from the same restaurant. She sat with my parents, champagne in hand, the caption reading, "New Beginnings." The audacity fueled me. They thought they'd won, but they were about to lose everything. Then William's phone pinged. He glanced down, his expression sharpening. Another email, he said, opening it on his laptop. From her account to the driver sent hours before the crash. He turned the screen toward me. The message was chillingly simple. No mistakes. She can't walk away. My heart pounded, but there was no fear, only focus. This was the proof we needed to end it. I looked at Robert. File the charges now. I want her arrested at that party. He nodded, already on the phone with his office. William stood adjusting his jacket. We'll get her tonight, he said. You sure you want to be there? I met his gaze unwavering. I need them to know I survived. He handed me a printed copy of the email, the final piece of evidence, and I took it ready for the confrontation ahead. That Snort's evening, I walked into a restaurant on Music Row. The clink of glasses and soft piano notes filled the air, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I'd invited my family under the pretense of peace, claiming I wanted to end the lawsuit and move on. The printed email from my sister to the truck driver tucked in my bag felt like a loaded weapon. William and his team waited outside, ready to move. Scanning the room, I spotted my sister at a corner table laughing with Charles. My parents beside them, their faces relaxed in false victory. I approached my steps steady despite the ache in my ribs. My sister's smile faltered as she saw me, her champagne glass freezing midair. Stacy, she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. My mother's eyes widened while my father shifted uneasily, his napkin crumpling in his hand. Charles froze pale as if seeing a ghost. You're supposed to be my sister. Started, then stopped, glancing nervously at the others. I'm here to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm, pulling out a chair. Let's settle this like a family. My sister's lips curled, but she gestured for me to sit. The restaurant buzzed around us, oblivious to the tension at our table. I set my bag down, my fingers, brushing the evidence. I've been thinking, I said, locking eyes with her. Maybe we can find a way to share the inheritance. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering before greed won out. You're finally seeing sense, she said, leaning forward. What's your offer? I pulled out a folder, not the fake agreement she expected, but the evidence William had compiled. This, I said, sliding it across the table. She opened it, her face draining of color as she saw the traffic camera stills, the bank statement showing her transfer to the driver, and the email. No mistakes. She can't walk away. You set me up, she screamed, slamming the folder shut. The piano faltered, heads turning as her voice cut through the room. You don't deserve that money, Stacy. You're nothing. Her rage was raw and unfiltered, but I didn't flinch. Charles tried to stand his chair, scraping, but my father grabbed his arm. Sit down, he growled, his voice low and shaken. My mother's hands trembled as she whispered. What is this, Stacy? It's the truth, I said evenly. Your daughter paid to have me killed. You backed her lies and swore I was unfit, but it's over. I nodded toward the entrance where William and 3 officers stepped in their badges, catching the light. My sister's eyes widened, her voice, rising to a shriek. You can't prove anything, but the evidence was irrefutable, and she knew it. The officers moved swiftly. One grabbed my sister's arm as she tried to bolt. Brenda Larson, you're under arrest for attempted murder and fraud. William said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Another officer cuffed Charles, who didn't resist, his head bowed in defeat. The clink of handcuffs rang sharp, drowning out the piano's hesitant melody. Diners stared, whispers spreading like wildfire. The Larson family's disgrace laid bare. My mother reached for me, tears streaming. Stacy, we didn't know it would go this far, she pleaded. My father nodded, his voice. We thought we were protecting you. I stepped back. Their words hollow. You chose her over me, I said coldly. You always did. My mother sobbed, but I felt no urge to comfort her. They'd stood by while my sister tried to erase me, and no apology could undo that. William signaled to the officers who led my sister and Charles out. Her screams echoed through the restaurant, but I felt no pity. The lights seemed brighter now, exposing every crack in my family's facade. I turned to leave, my bag in hand, the weight of the evidence gone, replaced by something heavier: solitude. I'd won, but at the cost of the family I'd once loved. As, Snorts, I reached the door, a waiter hesitated his tray, trembling. Are you okay, miss? He asked gently. I nodded, forcing a small smile. I will be, I said. Outside, the Nashville night was cool. The city's hum a distant comfort. I'd survived their betrayal, exposed their lies, but the victory was bittersweet. The piano played on as I walked away. 8 months later, I sat in a Nashville courtroom. The air was thick with tension, the wooden benches filled with reporters and onlookers. My sister sat at the defendant's table, her face pale, eyes avoiding mine. Charles slumped beside her, his arrogance gone, replaced by quiet defeat. The judge's gavel struck, silencing the whispers. "Brenda Larson and Charles West," he announced firmly, "you are hereby sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder and financial fraud." The words hit like a final blow, closing a chapter that had nearly cost me everything. My sister's head jerked up, her gaze, locking onto mine, burning with hatred. As the bailiff cuffed her, she didn't flinch, her stare, a silent vow of revenge. Charles muttered something under his breath, but didn't resist as he was led away, shoulders bowed. The courtroom buzzed, yet I felt strangely still, like the weight of it all had finally lifted, leaving only a sharp sense of clarity. My parents sat in the back, faces drained, their social image in ruins. They hadn't been charged. No direct proof tied them to the crash, but Nashville's tight-knit community had turned against them. Rumors of their deceit, their willingness to declare me unstable, had spread quickly. They'd lost friends, respect, everything but their guilt. My mother tried to meet my eyes, her look pleading, but I turned away. Forgiveness wasn't possible, not after they'd stood by my sister's lies instead of me. When the judge dismissed the court, I stepped outside, the August sun warm against my skin. I paused by a window, looking out over the city, its pulse steady despite the wreckage of my own world. Maybe forgiveness isn't about them, I thought. It's about finally being free. The realization settled deep inside, a truth I hadn't seen before. Holding on to resentment would only chain me to their betrayal. Letting go didn't excuse them. It reclaimed me. The past, snorts, 8 months had been a climb toward rebuilding. I'd poured myself into work consulting for a Nashville nonprofit, using my skills to help others instead of drowning in anger. The inheritance, $36 million, was secure, managed by Robert, who'd become more than my attorney, a genuine ally. Therapy had helped untangle the knots of hurt and mistrust. I'd learned that wealth doesn't corrupt, it reveals. My sister's greed, my parents' weakness, they'd all been unmasked. But in the process, I'd uncovered something stronger. My own resilience. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters, but I brushed past them. This wasn't about headlines. It was about closure. I thought of Brenda's glare, my parents' hollow apologies, their desperate attempts to twist the truth. They'd tried to take everything, my fortune, my life, even my name. But they'd failed. I was still standing, stronger than before. Walking away, I felt calm resolve. The money hadn't defined me. It had tested me, and I'd endured. Self-respect and courage were my anchors. Now, I'd lost my family, but I'd found something far more enduring: myself. I no longer needed their validation or affection to move forward. My life was mine to shape, and I was finally ready to live it on my own terms. The lesson was clear, not just for me, but for anyone listening. Money can tempt, corrupt, or expose who people truly are. What matters isn't the wealth. It's how you protect your integrity when everything else falls apart. Betrayal cuts deep, but self-rest heals deeper. I survived not because of the millions, but because I chose to believe in myself when no one else did. I walked out of the courthouse, ready to begin,